When my twin sister collapsed bleeding on my doorstep at midnight, I made a decision that would destroy a man's life. And I'd do it again. The rain was hammering down that Tuesday night, the kind of storm that makes you feel like the world's ending. I was watching reruns in my pajamas when I heard it. 3 soft knocks, barely audible over the thunder. Something about those knocks made my stomach drop. They weren't demanding, they were desperate. I opened the door and saw her. For a second, I thought I was staring at a ghost, or maybe a mirror that had been shattered and badly glued back together. It was Ilana, my identical twin, my other half, the sister I hadn't seen in 5 years, the sister I'd mourned, the sister I'd blamed myself for losing. But this wasn't the Ilana I remembered. Her left eye was swollen completely shut, the skin around it purple and black like rotting fruit. Her bottom lip was split open, still bleeding. She had bruises around her throat in the shape of fingers. Her bare feet were cut and dirty, and she was shaking so hard I could hear her teeth chattering. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a choked sob. I pulled her inside and locked the door behind us. The moment my arms wrapped around her, she collapsed against me, and I felt how thin she'd become. I could count her ribs through her torn shirt. She smelled like fear and rain and something metallic that I realized was dried blood. "Imani," she finally whispered against my shoulder, her voice cracked and broken. "He's going to kill me. If I go back, he'll kill me this time." I held her tighter, feeling rage flood through my veins like poison. My sister, my wild, fearless, unstoppable sister, who used to laugh at thunderstorms and never back down from anyone, was trembling in my arms like a wounded animal. That night, as I cleaned her wounds and put her to bed, I made a promise. Tobias Grant would pay for every bruise, every scar, every nightmare he had given her. I just didn't know yet how far I'd have to go to keep that promise, or what it would cost both of us. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more true stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Also, download your ebook titled Suspense and Family Drama Short Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My sister, my twin, my reflection, my other half, was curled up in my bed, whimpering in her sleep like a kicked dog. I sat in the corner of my bedroom, watching her breathe. Every few minutes, she'd jerk awake, eyes wide with terror, scanning the room like she expected someone to be standing there. Then she'd see me, remember where she was, and cry herself back to sleep. Around 3 a.m, she finally stayed awake. She sat up slowly, wincing with every movement, and looked at me with her one good eye. "You want to know what happened?" she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Ilana pulled the blanket around her shoulders and started talking. Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized against her will. 5 years ago, she'd met Tobias Grant at a charity gala in Charleston. He was everything she thought she wanted. Successful real estate developer, drove a Mercedes, wore suits that cost more than our monthly rent. He bought her flowers, took her to fancy restaurants, told her she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. "He made me feel special," she whispered, staring at her hands, like I was worth something. They got married 6 months later. I wasn't invited to the wedding. None of our family was. Tobias said he wanted it to be intimate, just the two of them and the ocean. I should have known then that something was wrong. The first time he hit her was 3 weeks after the honeymoon. She'd come home late from a job interview. She was trying to find work as a graphic designer, and he accused her of cheating. When she tried to explain, he slapped her so hard she fell and hit her head on the coffee table. "He cried afterwards," Ilana said, her voice cracking. "He got down on his knees and begged me to forgive him. Said his father used to beat his mother, and he'd sworn he'd never be like that. He promised it would never happen again." But it did happen again, and again, and again.
He started controlling everything: what she wore, who she talked to, where she went. He made her quit looking for jobs. He took her phone and went through every message, every email, every photo. If he found something he didn't like, even a text from a female friend, he'd lock her in their bedroom for hours. "He took my car keys," she said, her hands trembling. "Hid my ID, my credit cards, everything. I couldn't leave even if I wanted to. And when I tried," she pulled up her sleeve, revealing cigarette burns running up her forearm like a grotesque bracelet. "He said he was teaching me a lesson about loyalty." I felt bile rise in my throat. My hands clenched into fists so tight my nails drew blood from my palms. "Why didn't you call me, Imani? Why didn't you reach out? I would have come for you. I would have..." "He said if I contacted anyone from my old life, he'd kill them. He showed me a gun, Imani, put it to my head and made me choose my family's safety or my freedom. What was I supposed to do?" The room fell silent except for the rain still pounding against the windows. "2 weeks ago, he went on a business trip to Atlanta. He locked me in the house like always, but he made a mistake. He forgot to take the spare key to the back door. It was hidden in the kitchen, taped under the sink. I'd seen him put it there months ago." She waited until midnight, then slipped out through the back door. No shoes, no money, no phone, just ran. She hitchhiked from Charleston to Columbia, sleeping in gas station bathrooms, begging for spare change, hiding her face whenever she saw a black Mercedes. "It took me 12 days to get here," she said, looking up at me with tears streaming down her face. 12 days of wondering if he'd found me yet, if he was following me, if this was the day he'd drag me back and make me sorry I ever tried to leave. I crossed the room and sat beside her on the bed. Pulling her into my arms, she sobbed against my chest, her whole body shaking, and I felt something inside me shift, something hard and cold and absolutely certain. "He's not going to touch you again," I said. "I promise you that." She pulled back and looked at me, confusion flickering across her battered face. "Imani, you don't understand. He has money, lawyers, connections. If I go to the police..." "We're not going to the police," I said. She frowned. "Then what?" "We're going to make him pay in a different way." For the first time since she'd arrived, I saw a spark of something in her eye. Not hope, exactly. Something darker, something that looked a lot like hunger for justice. "Tell me everything about him," I said. "Every habit, every routine, every weakness, everything." And she did. By the time the sun came up, I knew exactly what kind of monster Tobias Grant was, and I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. What I didn't know yet was how much it would change both of us, or that by the time this was over, I wouldn't be sure which twin was which anymore.
For 2 weeks, Ilana stayed hidden in my apartment. She barely left the bedroom. Every time a car door slammed outside, she'd freeze, her eyes going wide with panic. I'd find her at night, standing by the window, staring out at the street like she expected to see Tobias's Mercedes pulling up. But slowly, something shifted. The fear in her eyes started mixing with something else, something harder. It was on day 13 that she looked at me, really looked at me, and said the words that would change everything. We could end this. I was making coffee, trying to pretend everything was normal. And what? His control. She walked over, her movements still careful, still pained. "Look at us, Imani. We're identical. Same face, same voice, same build. What if we switched?" I almost laughed. "You want me to pretend to be you? With him?" "Not pretend. Become." Her voice was steady now, stronger than I had heard it in weeks. "You go back as me, get inside his life, find proof of what he's done, expose him." "Ilana, that's insane." "Is it?" She grabbed my arm, urgent. "You said you wanted to help me. You said he'd pay. Well, here's how. I can't go to the police. He'll destroy me in court with his lawyers and his money. But you You could get what we need to bury him." I stared at her, my mind racing. The idea was crazy, dangerous, possibly illegal, but the cigarette burns on her arms were real, the broken look in her eyes when she first arrived was real, and the rage burning in my chest was very, very real. "How long has he been gone?" I asked quietly. "His business trips usually last 3 weeks. He's been gone for 2. She pulled out a burner phone she'd been hiding. "I can track his location. We'd have time." "Time for what?" "For you to become me." The training started that afternoon. Ilana walked me through every detail of her life with Tobias. How she moved, slower than me, more hesitant, always looking down. How she spoke, softer, with pauses, like she was always asking permission just to exist. "He likes his coffee at exactly 6:30. Not 6:25, not 6:35, 6:30. Black, 2 sugars, heated in the microwave for exactly 20 seconds because he says the coffee maker makes it too hot." That's specific. Everything about him is specific. Her jaw tightened. "He checks my phone every morning, goes through texts, emails, photos. He has all my passwords. He tracks my location. If I'm 5 minutes late coming home from the grocery store, he calls to ask why." She taught me his routines, his rules, his triggers. Never look him directly in the eye when he's angry. Always have dinner ready by 7. Don't question where he goes or who he calls. Laugh at his jokes even when they're cruel. Especially when they're cruel. "What if he notices something different?" I asked on day 4 of training. "He won't. He doesn't really look at me anymore. I'm just part of the furniture to him." The bitterness in her voice could have stripped paint. "Besides, you're a better actor than you think. We used to fool Mom all the time when we were kids, remember?" I did remember. The twin switch game had been our specialty. But this wasn't a game anymore. By day 10, I could mimic her perfectly. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous. The slight limp she developed from a time Tobias pushed her down the stairs. Even her handwriting, I practiced signing her name over and over until it looked identical. On day 14, Tobias texted. He'd be home in 3 days. Ilana and I stood in my bathroom, staring at our reflections side by side, 2 identical faces looking back, but only one of them was going into the lion's den. "You don't have to do this," Ilana whispered. "I can just keep running, change my name, disappear." "No," I turned to face her. "Running isn't living, and he doesn't get to win." She hugged me then, tight and desperate. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll get out if it gets too dangerous." I promised, but we both knew it was a lie. The night before Tobias's return, I drove to Charleston alone. Ilana gave me the keys to their house, the alarm code, the location of the spare phone she'd hidden in the heating vent. "Record everything," she said as I got in the car. "Every threat, every transaction, every moment of truth. But Imani, don't forget who you really are. Don't let him get in your head." I nodded, gripped the steering wheel, and drove into the darkness. The house was exactly as she'd described it. Beautiful on the outside, suffocating on the inside. Modern furniture, expensive art on the walls, everything perfectly arranged. It looked like a magazine spread. It felt like a mausoleum. I found the hidden phone in the vent and powered it on. Then I walked through each room memorizing the layout, checking for cameras. Tobias had 3 set up. Living room, kitchen, bedroom. I'd have to be careful. That night, I slept in their bed, her bed, and tried not to think about all the nights she'd spent here terrified, tried not to think about what I was about to face. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30, made his coffee exactly as instructed, put on one of her dresses, applied makeup the way she wore it, minimal, natural, nothing that would draw attention. At 6:15, I heard the garage door open. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to get out while I still could. Instead, I walked to the front door and waited. The door opened. Tobias Grant stepped inside, tall and handsome in his tailored suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He looked at me and smiled. "Hey, baby, missed me?" I smiled back, channeling every ounce of Ilana's learned submissiveness. "Welcome home." He kissed my cheek, and it took everything in me not to recoil. The performance had begun. The first 3 days were a careful dance. Tobias was exactly as Ilana had described. Charming on the surface, calculating underneath. He'd come home from work, tell me about his deals, his clients, his successes. He'd ask about my day in that tone that sounded caring, but was really checking up on me. "What did you do today, baby?" "Cleaned the house, made dinner, watched some TV." "Which shows?" Every question was a test. Every answer needed to match what Ilana would have said. He checked my phone every night before bed, scrolling through messages, call logs, browser history. Good thing Ilana had warned me. I'd kept everything bland, boring, exactly what he expected to see. But on day 4, something shifted. I was making breakfast when he came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. "You seem different," he murmured against my neck. "Lighter, somehow. Like you're not scared of me anymore." My blood froze. I forced myself to relax into his embrace, to play the role. "Maybe I just missed you," I said softly. 3 weeks is a long time." He turned me around to face him, studying my features. For a terrifying moment, I thought he'd figured it out. But then he smiled. "You're right. I should take shorter trips. Can't leave my beautiful wife alone too long." His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. "Someone might try to steal you away." The possessiveness in his voice made my skin crawl. That night at dinner, he started talking about money, about investments, properties, accounts. He mentioned a development deal in Myrtle Beach that would make us very comfortable. "Us?" I asked carefully. "Well, technically it's in your name, baby. Better for taxes." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "But it's our money, our future." Lies. All lies. But I smiled and nodded and played along. After he went to sleep that night, I snuck into his study. The hidden phone had a camera, and I photographed everything I could find. Bank statements, property deeds, wire transfers. Ilana had been right. He'd been stealing from her for years, moving money into accounts she didn't even know existed. But then I found something else. A folder labeled insurance. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Pictures of Ilana looking disheveled, disoriented, talking to herself, except I knew these were staged. The timestamps matched dates when he drugged her, when he'd gaslighted her into questioning her own sanity. He'd been building a case, evidence that she was mentally unstable. If she ever tried to leave or report him, he'd use these to destroy her credibility. My hands shook as I photographed every page. "What are you doing?" I spun around. Tobias stood in the doorway, shirtless, arms crossed, watching me with those cold, calculating eyes. "I couldn't sleep," I said quickly, letting fear creep into the voice the way Ilana would have. "I just was looking for some aspirin. I thought you might have some in your desk." "My desk is locked." "It was open. I swear I wasn't snooping." He crossed the room in 3 long strides and grabbed my arm, hard enough to leave marks. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying. I just wanted aspirin for my headache." He stared at me for a long, dangerous moment. Then something in his expression shifted. He let go of my arm and ran his hand through his hair. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry. I've been stressed about work. I didn't mean to grab you like that." He pulled me into his arms, held me close. "Forgive me?" This was his pattern. Ilana had warned me. Violence followed by apologies. Control disguised as concern. "It's okay," I whispered against his chest. "I understand." But I didn't understand. I didn't understand how anyone could be this twisted, this manipulative,
how he could hurt someone and then act like he loved them in the same breath. The next few days, Tobias watched me more closely. I could feel his eyes on me constantly, measuring, analyzing. He started asking strange questions. Do you remember our first date? The Italian restaurant. You ordered for both of us. What did I order? Chicken parmesan for me, ossobuco for you. He nodded, satisfied. But the questions kept coming, random and frequent, testing my knowledge, looking for cracks in the facade. But then, one night, I overheard him on the phone. I'd pretended to be asleep, but he'd gone out to the balcony to take the call. I crept close enough to listen. I told you, I'll have the money by Friday, he said, his voice low and urgent. Just give me till Friday. She doesn't suspect anything. There was a pause. No, she's completely under control, docile as a lamb. I've got her exactly where I want her. Another pause. The account transfers are ready. $500,000, just like we agreed. Then we're done. You get your cut, I get mine, and she gets nothing. My heart hammered. He wasn't just abusing Alana. He was actively stealing from her, working with someone else. But who? He said a name then, just once, quietly. Yolanda will handle the final transfer. Yolanda, Ilana's best friend, the woman who'd been there through her entire relationship with Tobias, the woman who'd supposedly been supporting her, checking in on her, making sure she was okay. She'd been betraying Alana the whole time. I felt sick. The recordings I had were damning enough, but this was bigger than I thought it was. This wasn't just domestic violence. It was organized theft, conspiracy, a calculated plan to destroy my sister and rob her blind. When Tobias came to bed, I kept my breathing steady, my body still, but inside I was burning. They thought they'd won, thought they'd broken Alana so completely that she'd never fight back. They had no idea who they were really dealing with now, and I was going to make sure they paid for every single lie.
I needed proof. Recordings of Tobias's phone calls wouldn't be enough. I needed Yolanda on record, admitting what she'd done. But I had to be smart about it. If I pushed too hard too fast, everything would fall apart. So I waited, played the perfect wife, smiled at Tobias's cruel jokes, let him think he'd won. 3 days after I overheard that phone call, I made my move. I texted Yolanda from Alana's phone. Hey girl, can you come over? I need to talk, it's important. She responded within minutes. Of course! Tobias out of town again? He's at work. I have a few hours. Be there in 20. I set up the hidden phone on the bookshelf, camera facing the living room couch. Then I waited, my nerves stretched tight as wire. When Yolanda arrived, she looked exactly like I remembered. Tall, stylish, wearing designer sunglasses and carrying a purse that probably cost more than my rent. She'd always been flashy, but now I saw it differently. Now I wondered how much of that flash came from Alana's stolen money. Girl, she hugged me tight and I had to force myself not to stiffen. You sounded stressed in your text. What's going on? Is Tobias giving you trouble again? The concern in her voice sounded so genuine. If I didn't know better, I would have believed she actually cared. Sit down, I said quietly. I need to tell you something. We sat on the couch, right in the camera's view. Yolanda took off her sunglasses, her expression full of fake sympathy. Whatever it is, you know you can trust me. I'm always here for you. I let the silence stretch for a moment. Then I looked directly at her. I know about the money, Yolanda. Her smile faltered. Just for a second, but I saw it. What money? The transfers, the accounts, the development deal in Myrtle Beach. I kept my voice calm, even. I know Tobias has been stealing from me, and I know you have been helping him. Her face went pale. Yolanda, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos I'd taken of the documents. I have proof. bank statements, wire transfers with your name on them, messages between you and Tobias. I have everything." She stared at the screen and I watched the calculation happening behind her eyes. Should she keep lying? Should she run? Should she try to explain? Finally, she chose option 3. "Okay." She held up her hands. "Okay, yes, but Yolanda, you have to understand, it wasn't my idea. Tobias approached me. He said you guys were having financial problems and he needed help moving some money around. I didn't know he was stealing. You knew exactly what he was doing." My voice was hard now. "You've been coming to this house for years. You've seen the bruises, the fear. You knew what he was and you helped him anyway." Tears started rolling down her face. Real or fake, I couldn't tell. "He paid me. God, I'm so sorry, but I needed the money. My business was failing. I had debts. So you sold out your best friend? I thought—" She choked on a sob. "I thought you'd never find out. I thought maybe if Tobias got what he wanted, he'd leave you alone. I was trying to help. You were trying to help yourself." She broke down then, full ugly crying. And I sat there, recording every word, feeling absolutely nothing. "How much?" I asked coldly. "How much did he pay you?" $50,000, over 3 years. "And how much did he steal from me total?" She looked down. "Almost $500,000. The number hung in the air between us. $500,000. My sister's inheritance, her savings, her future, gone. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to write down everything. Every transfer, every meeting, every conversation you had with Tobias about stealing my money. You're going to sign it, and then you're going to help me take him down." "Yolanda, I can't." "Yes, you can, because if you don't, I'm going to the police with what I already have. And when Tobias goes down, I'll make sure you go down with him." I leaned closer. "Or you can help me now, testify against him, and maybe you'll get out of this without a prison sentence." She stared at me, mascara running down her face. "You've changed," she whispered. "You're not the same person." "You have no idea," I thought. "Do we have a deal?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" I handed her a pen and paper. "Start writing." It took her 2 hours to write it all down. Every detail of her conspiracy with Tobias. How he'd first approached her at a party complaining about his difficult wife who didn't understand money. How he'd offered her a percentage if she'd help him access Alana's accounts. How she'd used her friendship to get account numbers, passwords, personal information. She wrote about the fake business deals, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. She wrote about the times Tobias had called her to verify Alana's location, to confirm she was still under control. When she finished, her hand was shaking. "What now?" "Now you sign it, and date it." She did. I took the paper, folded it carefully, and put it in my pocket. "Thank you for your honesty, Yolanda. I'm sure the prosecutor will appreciate it." Her eyes went wide. "You said—" "I said maybe you'd get out without a prison sentence. Maybe. Depends on how good your lawyer is." I stood up. "Now get out of my house." She stood, grabbed her purse, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I really am sorry." "No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." After she left, I grabbed the hidden phone and reviewed the footage. Perfect. Crystal clear audio and video of her confession. Combined with the documents and the recordings of Tobias, I had everything I needed. But I wasn't done yet. That night, when Tobias came home, I acted normal. Served dinner, smiled, played the role. He had no idea that his empire was about to crumble. "You seem happy tonight," he said over dessert. "What's got you in such a good mood?" I looked at him and smiled. "Just grateful for what I have." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "That's my girl." 3 days later, I made the call. Not to the police, not yet. First, I needed to confront him. needed him to know that he'd lost, needed him to feel what Ilana had felt, fear. I waited for the perfect moment, a night when Tobias was relaxed, confident, certain of his control. That's when predators are most vulnerable, when they think they've already won. It was a Thursday. He'd closed a big deal that day and came home in a celebratory mood. Expensive wine, takeout from his favorite restaurant, jazz playing softly through the house speakers. "To us," he said, raising his glass, "to our future." I clinked my glass against his. "To the truth." He didn't catch the edge in my voice, too drunk on his own success. After dinner, he poured himself whiskey and settled into his leather chair in the living room. I sat on the couch across from him, hands folded in my lap, heart racing. "I need to tell you something," I said. He looked at me, slightly amused. "What's that, baby?" "I know everything, Tobias. The stolen money, the fake accounts, Yolanda. All of it." His smile disappeared. The glass of whiskey stopped halfway to his lips. "What are you talking about?" "Don't." I kept my voice steady. "Don't insult me by pretending. I have the documents, the recordings, Yolanda's confession. I have everything." He set down his glass very carefully. "You went through my things." "Yes." "You've been snooping, invading my privacy after everything I've done for you?" "Everything you've done to me, you mean?" I stood up. The beatings, the isolation, the gaslighting, stealing my inheritance while pretending to love me. Did you really think I'd never find out? His expression changed. The mask of the charming husband cracked, and something cold and vicious showed through. "So what? You think you can leave? You think you can report me?" He laughed, harsh and bitter. "Go ahead, try. My lawyers will destroy you in court. I have photos, witnesses, documentation showing you're mentally unstable. No one will believe you." "I'm not going to court, Tobias." He frowned. "Then what?" "I'm going to the FBI. Wire fraud, conspiracy, financial crimes that cross state lines. That's federal jurisdiction. Your fancy local lawyers can't help you there." I watched the color drain from his face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone, started playing the recording of his call with Yolanda. His own voice filled the room. $500,000, just like we agreed. Then we're done. He lunged out of his chair towards me, but I stepped back, kept my phone up high. "If you touch me, this recording automatically uploads to the cloud and sends to 3 different email addresses, including the FBI field office in Colombia." He froze. "You're making a big mistake, Ilana." "No, Tobias, you made the mistake. You thought you broke me. You thought I was too scared, too beaten down to fight back." "I'll kill you," he said quietly. "Before I let you ruin me, I'll kill you." There it is. I smiled coldly. The real you. No more charm, no more pretending. He walked slowly to the side table, opened the drawer, pulled out a gun. My heart stopped. Ilana hadn't mentioned the gun, hadn't known he kept one in the living room. He held it loosely, not quite pointing it at me yet. "Delete the recordings. All of them. Now." "No." "Delete them or I swear to God, you'll what? Shoot me? Then you'll definitely go to prison. Murder is hard to explain away, even with good lawyers." His hand tightened on the gun. "Maybe I don't care anymore. Maybe I'd rather see you dead than see you win." We stood there, frozen in this horrible tableau. Him with the gun, me with my phone, both of us knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. Then I heard it. The front door opening. Tobias's head snapped toward the sound. "Who?" Ilana stepped into the room.
The real Ilana, my sister, looking stronger than I'd seen her in weeks, her chin up, her eyes fierce. Tobias went absolutely white. That's impossible. You're right here. He looked at me, then at her, then back at me. Understanding dawned slowly, horribly, across his face. Which one? He shook his head. No, you... Surprised. Ilana's voice was steady, strong. I bet you are. You thought I'd beaten you so badly I could never fight back. But I didn't fight back alone. I stepped closer to my sister, and we stood, side by side, two identical faces looking at the man who destroyed one of us and thought he could get away with it. We switched, Tobias. Weeks ago. I've been living your lies, recording your crimes, getting the evidence we needed to bury you. And I've been healing, Ilana added, getting stronger, preparing for this moment. Tobias looked between us, the gun still in his hand, his expression twisted with rage and confusion. You can't. This is entrapment, fraud. No court will. We don't need a court, Ilana said. She pulled out her own phone and pressed play. Yolanda's voice filled the room. We got her good, didn't we, baby? She doesn't even know what we took. Then Tobias's response. 500,000. She's completely under control, docile as a lamb. The recording kept playing. Every damning conversation, every admission of guilt, every plan to rob Ilana blind. That's fabricated, Tobias said desperately. You edited that. You... Put the gun down, Tobias. It's over. You lost. For a long moment, nothing happened. I genuinely didn't know if he was going to shoot us both, or break down, or run. Then he laughed. A horrible, broken sound. You think this ends here? You think you've won? He lowered the gun but kept it in his hand. You have no idea what I'm capable of. No idea what connections I have. What I can do. Sirens cut through the night. Getting closer. Tobias's eyes went wide. You called the police? We called them 20 minutes ago, right before I confronted you. They've been listening to this entire conversation. The sirens stopped outside. Car doors slammed, heavy footsteps on the porch. Tobias looked at the gun in his hand, then at us, then at the door. I saw him make the calculation. Was it worth it? Would it be better to fight, to shoot, to go down in flames? But in the end, he was just a coward. He set the gun on the table and raised his hands as the police burst through the door. That's him, Ilana said, her voice only shaking slightly. That's the man who's been abusing me for 5 years. They handcuffed him, read him his rights, and as they led him past us, toward the door, he stopped and looked at Ilana. I loved you, he said, softly. I really did. No, she replied. You loved controlling me. There's a difference. He opened his mouth to respond, but the officers pushed him forward, out the door, into the flashing lights of the patrol cars. Ilana and I stood in the living room, alone in the wreckage of her former life, and finally let ourselves breathe. We did it, I whispered. She grabbed my hand and squeezed tight. No, you did it. You saved me. We saved each other. But even as I said it, something felt wrong, something I couldn't quite name, a shadow at the edge of my thoughts that whispered, maybe when you swap places with someone, you don't just trade locations. Maybe you trade pieces of yourself. And maybe, just maybe, we'd traded too much.
The trial lasted 4 months. 4 months of sitting in that courtroom, watching Tobias try to play the victim. He wore expensive suits and kept his voice soft, respectful. He called the judge Your Honor with just the right amount of deference.
He even cried once, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief like he was the one who'd been hurt. But the evidence didn't lie. The recordings I'd made, his threats, his confessions about the money, his late-night phone calls with Yolanda, played through those courtroom speakers like a horror movie soundtrack. Ilana testified too, though it nearly broke her. She had to show the jury her scars, had to relive every moment of terror while Tobias sat 20 feet away, staring at her with those cold, empty eyes. Yolanda turned on him to save herself, just like I knew she would. She took a plea deal and testified that Tobias had orchestrated everything: the financial fraud, the isolation tactics, even planting fake evidence to make Ilana look unstable if she ever tried to leave. "He told me she was crazy," Yolanda said on the stand, refusing to look at either of us. "Said she needed to be controlled for her own good. I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him because the money was good." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty, on all counts. Aggravated assault, fraud, conspiracy, theft, coercion. Tobias Grant was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Yolanda got 3 years and had to pay restitution. When the verdict came down, Ilana grabbed my hand so hard I thought she'd break my fingers. She didn't cry, didn't smile, just sat there, breathing like she'd been underwater for years and finally surfaced. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us with cameras and microphones, shouting questions. Ilana ignored them all. She walked straight to her car, got in, and drove away without a word. I understood. Some victories don't feel like winning. They just feel like survival. The months after the trial were harder than I expected. Ilana moved into a new apartment across town, somewhere Tobias had never been, somewhere with no memories attached. She started therapy twice a week. Some days she was okay. Other days, I'd get a call at 2 a.m. and find her sitting on her kitchen floor, unable to breathe, convinced he'd somehow gotten out and was coming for her. "It's like he's still in my head," she told me one night, her voice hollow. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to find a way to hurt me, even from behind bars." I stayed with her those nights, sleeping on her couch, making sure she knew she wasn't alone. Slowly, painfully, she started to heal. She picked up painting again, something she'd loved before Tobias. Her apartment filled with canvases, bright, angry colors that seemed to bleed out all the darkness she'd been carrying. She got a part-time job at an art supply store, started smiling again, real smiles that reached her eyes. One afternoon, about 8 months after the trial, we sat on her apartment balcony watching the sunset. She'd just finished a painting, a woman with 2 faces, one crying, one laughing. "You know what's strange?" she said, not looking at me. "I thought revenge would make me whole again. Like if I just made him suffer the way he made me suffer, I'd feel better." "Did it?" I asked. She was quiet for a long moment. "No. What healed me wasn't watching him go to prison. It was realizing I didn't have to be alone anymore. That you came for me. That you risked everything to help me fight back." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "We gave him hell, didn't we?" I laughed, and it felt good. Yeah, we really did. For a while, I believed we'd won, that the story was over, that we could both move forward and leave Tobias Grant rotting in a cell where he belonged. I should have known better. Nothing that involves monsters is ever really over.
The letter arrived on a Tuesday, 3 months after that conversation on the balcony. I almost threw it away. Prison mail always feels like poison, even when it's sealed. But something made me open it. Maybe curiosity, maybe stupidity. Inside was a single photograph. Me and Ilana as kids, maybe 7 years old, our faces pressed together, grinning at the camera. Our mother had taken that photo the summer before she died. I hadn't seen a copy in years. On the back, in Tobias's handwriting, "You might have won this round, but one day you'll realize I wasn't the only monster. My blood went cold. I called Alana immediately. "Did you get anything from Tobias?" "No, why?" I told her about the letter, about the photo. She went quiet for too long. "Imani," she finally said, her voice tight, "how did he get that picture?" That's when the strange things started. First, it was texts. Alana's phone kept getting messages from unknown numbers. Nothing threatening, just strange. "Saw you at the grocery store today. You looked tired. Nice painting in your window. Sleep well." Then her car. She came out one morning to find all 4 tires slashed. No note, no witnesses, just clean cuts that meant someone had taken their time. Security footage from her apartment building showed a figure in a hoodie, face hidden, standing outside her door at 3 in the morning. Just standing there, watching. The police said there wasn't much they could do without a clear face or direct threat. They confirmed Tobias was still locked up, so it couldn't be him. Maybe a copycat, they said, maybe someone he knew on the outside. "Tobias has money hidden somewhere," Alana said when we met to talk about it. "Money the courts never found. What if he hired someone?" We decided to disappear. New state, new names, new lives. It felt like defeat, but it also felt necessary. Better to run than to wait for whatever Tobias had planned to find us. We moved to North Carolina, rented a small house together. For 3 months, nothing happened. No texts, no slashed tires, no mysterious figures. We started to breathe again. Then one evening, I went to the grocery store. When I came back to my car, there was a note tucked under the windshield wiper. White paper, black ink, neat handwriting. "Mirror, mirror, who's the real twin now?" My hands started shaking. I looked around the parking lot searching for anyone watching, but it was empty except for a mom loading groceries and an old man pushing a cart. I drove home too fast, my mind racing, burst through the front door. "Ilana, we need to leave, now! Someone left—" She was sitting on the couch, calm, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Let me see it," she said quietly. I handed her the note. She looked at it for a long time, then looked back at me. "You recognize the handwriting?" "No. Should I?" She stood up and walked to the window, her back to me. "Look at it again, Imani. Really look." I studied the note, my heart pounding. The letters were neat, careful. Especially the R's. They had this little curl at the bottom that looked almost decorative. My chest tightened. Ilana had never learned to write her R's like that. She always made them plain, straight lines. But I had. Our second-grade teacher made me practice cursive R's for weeks until I got that exact curl right. "Ilana," I said slowly, my voice barely working, "what's going on?" She turned around, and for the first time since that rainy night when she showed up at my door, beaten and scared, I saw something in her face that terrified me. She smiled. Not the broken smile of a victim, not the grateful smile of a sister who'd been saved. Something else entirely. "Tell me, Imani," she said softly, "when exactly did you start thinking you were still you?" The room tilted, my vision swam. "What are you talking about?" She walked toward me, slowly, deliberately. "That night I showed up at your door, beaten and scared. You took me in, cleaned my wounds, let me sleep in your bed. And then I told you everything about Tobias, didn't I? Every detail, every habit, every weakness." My mouth went dry. "You learned to be me so well, and I learned to be you. But somewhere in all that switching and planning and pretending, Did you ever stop to wonder if maybe we'd forgotten to switch back? I tried to speak but couldn't. Or maybe, she whispered, stepping closer, you weren't Imani to begin with. Maybe the woman who opened the door that night was already me. The photograph from Tobias's letter flashed in my mind. The one he shouldn't have had, the one from our childhood that had been in Alana's possession, not mine. My knees buckled. I sat down hard on the floor. Because suddenly, I couldn't remember with absolute certainty which sister I'd been before that rainy night. The memories felt real, but whose memories were they? Ilana, or whoever she was, crouched down in front of me. She said, "Don't worry, I won't hurt you. We're sisters after all. We'll figure this out together." She stood up and walked to the door. "But first, I need to run an errand. I'll be back soon." The door closed behind her. I sat there on the floor, staring at the note in my hands, trying desperately to remember something, anything that would tell me for certain who I really was. But the harder I tried, the more the memories blurred and shifted, like looking at my reflection in disturbed water. And somewhere in the distance, I heard laughter. Or maybe it was crying. With twins, it's always so hard to tell.
Here's what I learned, or what she learned, or what we both learned. I'm still not entirely sure. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It just creates new scars in different places. When you stare into someone's darkness long enough, you risk losing track of where they end and you begin. My sister came to me broken, and I tried to save her by becoming her. But in the process of swapping places, of living her pain and breathing her fear, something fundamental shifted. We didn't just trade roles, we traded pieces of ourselves. Maybe that's what Tobias meant in his letter. Maybe he knew that by hurting one twin so badly, he'd damage both of us in ways we'd never fully recover from. Maybe his real victory wasn't in the abuse itself, but in making us question our own identities. Or maybe this is simpler than it seems. Maybe trauma does this, makes you lose yourself so completely that you have to rebuild from nothing. And when you rebuild, who's to say you put the same person back together? The truth is, I don't know anymore if I'm Imani or Ilana. I don't know if the woman who showed up that rainy night was really my sister or if she was me running from myself. I don't know if the trial saved her or doomed me. What I do know is this. When you love someone enough to take their place in hell, you have to accept that you might not find your way back to heaven. Be careful whose pain you carry. Be careful whose face you wear. Because sometimes in the quest for justice, the line between victim and survivor, between helper and helped, between self and other, becomes so blurred that you lose sight of which side of the mirror you're really on. And once that line disappears, you might never find it again. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe for more intense family drama stories. Lastly, download your ebook titled Suspense and Family Drama Short Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment.